Good morning. How are you today? I hope you are well. I am very, very well, and I'm actually looking forward to being part of this training this morning. We are literally getting to the end of the year. Very exciting, but exciting for those who've had goals and very clear programs that they put together in line with what they wanted to achieve as a desired outcome in the year 2025. And for those of you that haven't had any goals or anything like that, or you had goals but you procrastinated, that's pretty deep because it means you haven't really done much. And so therefore, well, there you have it. You have to make your mind up and do something about changing your situation because this is it. This is now a new year, new time, and you need to make sure that you put everything in place to make that happen. So, as far as I'm concerned, you have, it's never too late. You can take advantage now and do something serious about changing that scenario instead of just sitting there and saying, oh, well, I hope things will work out. No, they won't. You have to be very deliberate about it and do something, because if you don't, then that will not happen. So you have to make it a point to actually push so that you see something happen. Now, meantime, today is Monday, and I am here to take us through our session, and we are looking at the fourth item in the series under the Neuro Webinar Seminar, which I run. So I will be talking a bit about that, but what's interesting is for those who have registered already, next week, this coming Monday, is going to be the 5-day Neuro Webinar. So those of you who want to be part of it, you want to be registered here. I'm just going to give you highlights of the fourth day. I've been doing highlights from day one, so today we're on day 4, and you will get to learn about what exactly the highlights are and what involved in them. So remember, we come every single day, Monday to Friday. Monday is myself with this particular series. On Tuesday, Dr. Sunshine Sylvia, she comes on with her session, which is on mindset change. Wednesdays is Sampa with her session on Mompreneur, the Mompreneur series. Thursdays is Dr. Nelly with Prosperity for Your Soul. And on Friday, we have the New Image people coming through with their program. Now, I want to quickly jump into what I'm doing today. But before I do so, let me give you an idea of what is contained in the 5-day webinar. So on day 1, we look at the brain behind your life. In fact, the whole idea, what is exactly neurotherapy and what does it deal with? It's a transformative neurotherapy seminar designed to restore what trauma tried to dismantle. So your mind, your spirit, your capacity to thrive using soul deep healing and system level renewal techniques with guaranteed results. Very, very effective. I've been working with a number of people. Right now, I'm taking somebody through dream therapy. You will be amazed to learn that even dreams, there's a whole therapy around that. And there's so much meaning to dreams. A lot of people usually tend to quickly rush to giving dreams some kind of spiritual thing to him. Whilst that's true, but there's so much more beyond just the spirituality. In fact, to be honest, the spirituality is, like maybe about 10% of your dreams. The other 10% is 10% of your dreams. That means wherever the dream is coming from, it's spiritual. But 90% of your dreams are coming from within you. And remember, you're a tripartite being. You're a man, you're a spirit that possesses a soul that resides in a body. So we have this tripartite component of who we are. So our bodies will definitely, be a big influence in getting us to realize what's going on through dreams, and then so will our souls. Now, today, I want to just walk you through very quickly what the 5-day webinar involves and then sink into the fourth one. So in the first day, we'll be looking at what is called the brain behind your life. Everything about what goes on as far as your life is concerned and what it's about. On the second day, we'll look at reframing your inner dialogue. You'll be amazed how much we speak so badly to ourselves. And this comes as a function of our environment. The third day, we're looking at breaking bias and building change. So how much bias, cognitive bias to be specific, can be such a hindrance to yours and my progress. So we need to get the right programming in our minds. Day 4, leadership and emotional mastery. That's what we're looking at today. And we'll go in deep detail with that. And then day 5, restoration and renewal. How we can actually restore our minds to get us to the right state of progress. So let's go into day 4, which deals with emotional mastery, leadership and emotional mastery. And I want you to know something. When it comes to leadership, you'll be quite amazed to know that for most of us, we actually are born to be leaders. Now, a lot of people disagree with that because there's a saying out there that leadership is something that's, what do they say? That either you're born with it or you're not born with it. And so not everybody's born to be a leader. Well, it depends, but every one of us is expected to have domain because the Bible says, and have dominion. So the component of dominion is given to mankind, B'nai Adam. So all human beings are given this thing about having to lead in whichever area of life they're in. And so leadership is something that's fairly natural, but how to do it well is where a lot of emotional mastery, clarity, and such things come in. And in fact, today's topic is entitled, let me just share the title here. There it is. The intersection of leadership, emotional clarity, and mental renewal. So let's jump into that. I will walk you through briefly, but the webinar goes way into detail. Remember, it's 2.5 hours, and I'm doing 2.5 hours and 20 minutes. Come on. So obviously there's not much I'm going to say, but this is just to show you how powerful this is. And if you want to be a part of it, I'm not sure, but I think there's a Q code somewhere. So just double check if there's a Q code, you can scan that and be able to get details for the webinar. Now, this session, the whole idea around this topic, right, is going to be helping you lead with wisdom, regulate your inner world, and build trust from the inside out. So one of the biggest challenges for a lot of people is they don't know how to tap into wisdom and utilize it well. And that, especially in leadership, can be such a minus. So you need to learn how to utilize wisdom. Now, there's obviously different types of leadership. There's what we call dissonant and resonant leadership. And so when it comes to leadership from that angle, each one of these plays a positive role, depending on the kind of situation you're in. So resonant leadership is participative. It's the type that consults. It's the type that connects with those that they are leading in order to gain trust and also to gain a sense of mentorship and fathering. That there's that type of leadership. So it's called resonant leadership. So it resonates with those who are being led. So there's a lot of willingness on the part of those being led to be taken along with this leader. So that's resonant leadership. Then you got the other type of leadership, which is dissonant leadership. Now, dissonant leadership. So for example, let me give an example. So a resonant leader would be a person like Mandela. When Mandela was ruling or leading, or Mahatma Gandhi, even though he never actively ruled, India, but his leadership and his influence was so profound. And both these leaders were very resonant. They resonated with those that they led. And many people wanted to willingly follow them and even die for them. So that's the level of resonant leadership. It's very powerful. It's focused on having resonance with the people that you lead. And there's many times where people are willingly giving of themselves to be part of this leadership. Then there's a second type of leadership, which is called dissonant leadership. Now, in dissonant leadership, it's authoritarian or totalitarian. It does not really consult. In dissonant leadership, there's a dissonance between the one leading and the ones being led. In fact, the ones being led are usually led without really their willingness. They are not really happy or willing to be part of this leadership, but they have no option. So it's very dictatorial in nature. And it's very, how can I say? I wouldn't say self-serving, because if I say self-serving, that sounds wrong. Because in certain instances, the leaders genuinely want to see progress for the organization, country, or institution, whatever it is that they're leading. So they don't, so a good number won't do it selfishly. So I wouldn't say it's a selfish leadership. No, it's a leadership that is authoritarian. So it says, this is the way I know, and you're going to follow me because I know what needs to be done here. If you don't follow me, this whole thing is going to fall apart. So I think one of the most famous dissonant leaders we have today, of course, is Donald Trump. And if you look at Donald Trump, it's my way or the highway. He's a very forceful individual. You really have to have quite a bit to argue against Donald Trump. And there's always been leaders like Donald Trump throughout history. I think one of the most famous ones out there in the known world, as they call it, would be Winston Churchill. And remember, he ruled during World War II when the country was in a crisis. And because the country was in a crisis, they had reached a point, I mean, that's the UK. They had reached a point where they needed somebody a bit dissonant, somebody a bit pushy and hard. And that's the type of leadership that he provided. So he comes in and he's very, very forceful, just like Donald Trump, like I say. Now, these leaders do stuff for the sake of their countries, definitely, but they're very, very authoritarian. I mean, here in Africa, I think Magufuli was one of the best examples we had, because Magufuli was not resonant, he was dissonant. He had his own idea of what he thought and felt was the type of situation we needed, and he would push with all that. And in the process, of course, created a lot of enemies. But that's how dissonant leadership is, because it doesn't consult really. If it does, it's just to understand what's going on, and then it will still make its own decision, and it's not democratic. So that's what it is. So now what's interesting is in all this, there's a key of wisdom. Wisdom is very important. And then the regulation of the inner world, in other words, being able to control what's going on inside of you so that you're not suffering from what we call cognitive bias. I think I covered cognitive bias, well, it's going to be covered as well today. But cognitive bias can be very, very bad, and it can really bring a lot of wrong distortions of what's going on. In fact, one of the most common problems with cognitive bias is they create something called assumptions and false realities, among other things. So limiting beliefs and filters. So cognitive biases can be very, very bad. And what they do is they lead you in a direction or into thinking in a particular way that doesn't really match what's going on. So in the idea of all this, there is going to be a number of things we cover. I'll talk briefly about them. So the first one is the neuroscience of influence and trust based on SCAF. So SCAF is a model which we learn in neuroscience. It's a very interesting model. Apparently, did you know that all of us, whenever we go into any environment, any situation, we scan the environment using this model called SCAF. Now, SCAF was put together by a gentleman called Dr. David Rock. And Dr. David Rock is a well-known neuroscientist. So he put together this acronym, and it's become a standard that we use in neuropsychology. SCAF stands for status, certainty, what's the A? Autonomy, what's the R? What's R? It's gone. And F, fairness. So R should be, when I remember, I'll tell you. So what SCAF does, these methods of scanning the environment is very powerful, because then the brain is able to determine if the environment is a threat or it's friendly. The environment is good to get into or not good to get into. And this type of scanning is so prevalent in every aspect of our life. If we are not aware, in fact, I'll tell you, most people aren't even aware how much these cognitive biases based off SCAF actually influence everything they do, whether it's how you perceive people, whether it's how you interact with them, even situations, even opportunities, they are based off SCAF. So if, for example, you do not feel comfortable with a particular opportunity or a particular individual, then it doesn't matter what that individual says. You already have filters up, you have biases up, and you're not going to listen to what they say. And that's why a vehicle that brings a message is so critical to how people receive the message. So even when somebody has a message, there are times when there is wisdom in using somebody else to deliver the message, because then the message is more likely to be received than when you deliver it yourself. But SCAF is a very powerful thing. It operates at subliminal level. It's always there. So let me talk a bit about it. So S, which stands for status. So everyone, when they go into any situation, they're usually looking for how that environment receives them and what status they themselves play in that environment, and how that environment works on their ego and their sense of self-worth. So status is a big deal for a lot of people. In fact, what you'll notice is that for many, they will actually not do many things on account of status. So for instance, somebody's going through a change in their life from one particular level of life to another. A lot of people fail to go into this new place because it is not their status. And I mean, usually on the lower side, it's not their status. Also, those going to a higher level, they get a sense of, imposter syndrome. That's all coming from this status thing. So the mind is always scanning. Am I acceptable here? Do I fit into this? Is this suitable for me? Then there is C, which is certainty. Certainty has to do with being sure of where one is and whether it's safe or not. So if it's not safe, people will not want to delve into that. A is autonomy. People want to maintain a level of independent decision making. People hate to be forced into things. So that is a very big deal. But then, the C, which is certainty, is very interesting, because if the individuals that are forcing you to do things they want are people that you consider of high status, and therefore you want to belong to their circle. In others, the certainty of being in their circle is such a big deal that you want to be part of it, then many times it will override the autonomy, because you'd rather be associated with those individuals. So you do so much to look good in front of those people because you obviously have a great desire to be in their circle. And then R. Goodness day. Today I have totally forgotten what the R stands for. And so I'm so sorry. I won't be able to say it, but I know it, but it's gone. And then the F. F is fairness. So in all things that we do, we all want to feel that we've been treated fair. If you do not treat people fair in any way, shape, or form, it has a very big impact on how they then give of themselves. So fairness becomes a very fundamental, basic right that everybody operates from. It's from where we get the sense of justice and injustice. So when something is not right, like there's injustice, people will react. I mean, take for instance, sorry to use this example, but it's a good one. The Maria Zalumis, the Z Farmer incident recently. It's amazing how many people on social media were absolutely riled with that case. They were so touched and they were so angry. And even now, the fact that they're on bail has been a big issue for a lot of people in the social media circles. So there's been quite a bit of a backlash. People feel like she's being treated with kiddy gloves and all these things. Now that's an example of fairness. And why is the sense of fairness so extreme here? Because somebody chose to share the video of the young man being tortured, and then after that, then they heard that the young man died. I can tell you personally, that type of situation that happened with the Z Farmer happens every day. Somewhere in this country, somebody is unjustly killed by a mob or by people because they thought he's a thief or whatever. But because it's not in the public eye, that's a thief, he deserves to die. But so whether that guy was a thief or not, the point is it was recorded, and then it was done by somebody who is in the high public circles, and so that becomes a point of reference to bring about the fairness issue. It's such an interesting thing, because like I keep saying, how many thieves are actually beaten to death every day? But the question is, who did it? And is it fair or not? So you find that the public perception of fairness is very interesting. And even at personal level, you'll be amazed how much prejudice we bring into many things. And this can distort how we receive those things, and consequently, how much they actually go on to help us or not help us. So the SCARF model and the influence and trust component of SCARF is huge. So people with high levels of leadership and emotional intelligence have understood that they can utilize and leverage SCARF in order to create a very positive mindset among those following. This is very critical, because if you don't do that, I assure you, it's going to have a backlash on you later. It can actually work against you. I mean, we always joke about this. Whenever you see companies get to a deadlock and there's an actual work stoppage. Sorry, that's my lovely cup of coffee. If you see a work stoppage anywhere, it means the leadership in that particular company have not mastered emotional mastery. They've not mastered how to manage emotions in a given scenario with workers. They don't know how to talk to them. They don't know how to leverage wisdom and persuasion, the art of persuasion. They don't have that. And that's why you end up seeing workers becoming so pissed off and going on work stoppages, especially when you see, if it's a typical blue collar setup and you see people toing outside. Just know that there's a leader among the exco in that company who is a terrible people person. They have no skill on bargaining with people and managing people. I know because there are leaders I'm aware of who've made workers work 9-10 months with no salaries and nobody quit. Why? Because that leader was so resonant. That leader had so much wisdom. That leader knew how to tap into the greatest aspects of individuals to bring them to a high level. That leader made people feel present and acknowledged. So bad leaders don't know how to acknowledge people and how to work with people. They have no people skills, and that's why they get hated, they get disliked, and many times there's just a general somber attitude in those workplaces. People work, but they're not so happy. If they had an opportunity to leave, they would leave. So that's very important. I mean, time obviously is already gone, but there's another aspect now. In leadership, there is something that we talk about in our webinar, this particular one called the Locus of Control. And this is all about reclaiming your power from external chaos. So there are essentially two types of locus or loci. The first one is internal and the second one is external. So individuals, whoever you are, you're either governed or led by an internal locus or an external locus. So what's the difference in these two? In the internal locus, an individual is fully in charge of their destiny. They believe in their hearts that they control everything in their life. In fact, nothing happens to them by chance. It is all by design. And even if chance occurred to them, they would maximize it and find ways to ride that chance and what life hands them. So they always have this attitude. Their thinking is like, I am in charge. I'm in control. I'm in charge of my destiny. I decide what becomes of everything. What can I do to improve from this situation? What can I learn from this situation? That's called an internal locus of control. Very powerful in leadership because it is the only way that you can manage the chaos that comes in life. So people with an internal locus of control are not controlled by events. They are not controlled by what happens to them in life. They are very, very powerfully aware of themselves internally, and they operate from that level. They never ever allow what people think, allow what people say, and allow what circumstances dictate to determine their final decisions. They are always about what's going on inside me. And so as a result, these people have got a great sense of emotional mastery, because even when things are going chaotic outside them, they maintain composure. That's very needed for leadership, because there are many times as a leader, you will be leading through crisis. And when you're leading through crisis, let me be honest with you, the last thing your followers need is to see you breaking down for no reason at all, just freaking out because everything is going on, looking like you've lost the plot. You can't do that as a leader. You can do that in private if you want, but never in public, because what you present matters. And so people with an internal locus of control are not moved by what's going on outside. Now, the people with an external locus of control are completely, they're completely thrown about by events outside them. So they care about what people say. They care about what people think. They definitely are affected massively by what happens to them in their life. So for them, it's like someone else is in charge of my destiny. I have no control over what's going on with me. Everything around me is in the hands of someone. They are very fatalistic, these people with an external locus of control. So everything is fate. The devil, the economy, the president, the party, the relatives, whoever, somebody is messing them up. Their spouse, they always are looking to others as an excuse for their state. So they are big on stuff happening. So their internal language is like, I don't control anything. It's fate. You know these things. God is the one in charge. Uh, Now, let me be a bit careful with that one, because some people will completely misconstrue me. God is in control, but God is not in charge. If God was in charge, there would be none of these things going on right now. He's in control. So in other words, he's the ultimate judge to whom all must answer. But in this day and age, let me remind some people that when God created man, he literally handed over the mandate of running this reality to man. That's why man is called a small God. He's a God. He's in charge of his domain. Remember, be fruitful, multiply, replenish or manage, subdue and have dominion. Fivefold mandate: subdue and have dominion. These two alone are proof that you're in charge, no one else. So when you hand over your in chargeness to someone else, believe me, they will take control and they'll do everything in their power to keep you subdued. That's why there's none as dangerous or none as powerful as those who realize that everything is in their control, not other people. So what you got to realize is that people with an external locus of control are very fatalistic. Everything is someone else, not them. And you know, the life happens to them, and when it happens, there's nothing they can do. Why should they bother? Everything is just out there, and things are just bad, and there's nothing I can do. Oh, it's the economy, it's the president, it's my wife, it's my husband, it's my boss. It's, you know, it's always someone else, not themselves. And the external locus of control is very bad because life is in the habit of throwing lots of curveballs. So if you are going to allow what is happening around you to dictate who you become, believe me, life is really hard. It will throw lemons, it will throw all manner of stuff your way, and it'll mess you up. And somebody said it will chew you and spit you out. And therefore, how you deal with it, how you deal with life, how you handle the curveballs of life will determine how powerful you are. So an external locus of control is the weakest place you can be. And I really mean it, guys. You do not want to be operating from an external locus of control. You want to operate from an internal. And you know, and I'll need to end here, but just imagine how rich the content is. But here, in marriages, it's the same thing. And in fact, let me kind of end on marriage. When you go into the marriage, how you go in determines what you get out of it. If you go into a marriage and your whole goal and idea is to receive, in fact, let's extend that. Whether you go into a relationship, whether you go into a workplace, whether you go into any place where you serve, if your aim is what you receive only and not what you bring, you'll be a very disappointed person. I can assure you, you will meet all manner of negativity, and very quickly it will mess you up. In short, when we come into this world, we're not brought to receive, we're brought to give. We're brought to bring out. No wonder Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive. People didn't understand that. What it essentially meant is it's more blessed to serve than to be served. So all of us are on this planet to serve. I always tell people that service is the highest call of purpose. The purpose for which something exists is to be of service through work to whichever place they are called to. And the compensation you get for serving by your work is the result of this work expressed. It's the result of the value demonstrated to the public or to the place. So even in the marriage, when we go into a marriage, if you go in expecting to be receiving only, then surely you're a narcissist and you're not going to see that marriage last. The only way marriages work is when we go in expecting to give. In fact, to give more than we receive. In fact, all relationships are on the basis of what we bring on the table, not what we get from the table. And that's why people are willing to compensate you when you demonstrate value through service. That's why giving is so powerful. That's why in this concept I've just talked about of locus of control, we control the narrative. We determine what we're going to take out there. And when we're going out there, we are bringing the best of us to the table. We are expecting to give and serve with all our hearts and souls. And when you do that well, believe me, society will compensate you. That's how life works. and they will compensate you according to how many you serve. The difference between an ordinary individual like myself and a millionaire or a billionaire is the number of people they are serving. The number of people they are serving. So really, at the end of the day, how many are you serving? How many people are you blessing? How many people are you changing their lives? And that's why you notice that the reason why these tech giant billionaire guys are billionaires now is because, frankly, they're serving billions of people. There's no way you can serve billions of people and not see a return or compensation for your service. That's just how life works. That's why people would be willing to go and put money into an individual like, God rest his soul, Charlie Kirk. He was receiving millions and millions of dollars for what he was doing by different interest groups. Why? Because they saw the amount of influence that came through the service that he was doing. It's so important for us to understand that, my dear friends. If you understand this particular component I've just explained, it'll be a life changer. So anyway, that's the bit on locus of control. You really want to make sure that you have an internal locus of control. I operate with an internal locus of control. I know definitely Dr. Nelly, Dr. Sylvia, they operate from an internal locus of control. Why? Because we determine our destiny. No one else will. Let me tell you, even God, he'll just put the dreams of your future in your heart and mind. But it's you to go make that happen. Because why? You were put in charge, you were given the authority, and you need to go out there and make it happen. So those of you who are interested in this webinar, next week it's on Monday to Friday, Monday to Saturday. You will see all the details. I'll be sharing them all over my socials. And of course, those who are part of my mailing list, which is in thousands now, will be receiving messages just today. I will start sharing about the 5 days, and you want to be part of that. You want to register, you want to come on it, and all the details, pricing, you name it, it's all there. I do not know where the Q code is, but I think it's somewhere. I did generate one, but I just don't know where it is. So it might be popping up somewhere on the screen or whatever. That's where all the details are. You can scan that, and it should be able to do you good. So on that note, guys, thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow with Dr. Sunshine as she comes to have